And you could help me a ton
Great.
by helping me understand a little bit more about the Metro Council and your experience of it. So we're gonna talk for just a few minutes here, and I just appreciate not only getting to know you, but having you help me understand a little bit what's going on. I've read a little about you, but I'd love to hear your version of how it is that you got to the council and how you decided to run for an at-large seat. What's your experience been?
So I started with moving to Nashville from a very small town and being panicked that the anonymity of a big city would be a horrible follow-up to the community that I experienced in my small town. And was delighted to discover my neighborhood association and to go, oh great, here's my community. These are people that care about each other and take care of each other. So I got involved in the neighborhood association, and it began with simple things like tree planting, and then historic preservation, and then zoning issues, and then larger citywide issues. And I thought, I have learned what council members do. I think when the time is right, I will run for council. And so the seat opened up at a good time as my children had headed off to college, so I jumped in and ran for council. And discovered it is similar to what you do as a community activist, but certainly when you get into the budget process and other things, there are other big topics that you become involved in. In my case, affordable housing was something that was clearly a big issue in Nashville that I got very involved in. And so as my second term of being a district council member was nearing the close, I really wanted to continue that work and some other important citywide issues. So that prompted the decision to run for Metro Council at large. Now I'm excited to have jumped that hurdle, which was a big one, and now be able to focus on some important citywide issues, which NOAA has been such a leader in identifying the things that Metro needs to be focusing on: education and criminal justice. So I'm excited to now, as much as I love getting potholes filled and getting stop signs put in because it's gratifying and quick, these bigger issues are really something that takes your full attention, and I'm excited about being able to focus on.
I'd love to go back and unpack about 3 or 4 things you just said, but let's start with the second to last thing you said, which was getting to a council at large seat was a big obstacle. Could you talk, what did it take to actually get there?
This is a big county, and being elected at large means covering the entire county, getting to know all the other communities. I mean, I know District 18 really well. It's one of 35. So I got to know the other 34, not as well, but I've at least spent time in every single one of those districts and tried to listen to people and find out, what the issues are that are affecting them most. And there are a lot of similar things, but there are also some things that become very different locally as you
Say
get
a little more about what are the threads that you felt like, oh, they're resonating, I'm speaking their language, and when you found maybe this is a different community than.
So big threads that are everywhere. Certainly, housing affordability is something that affects everybody. In some communities, it's more an issue of, this is important to me because my employees can't find housing close to where I am employing them, and they can't get to work because we haven't fixed the transit problem, or we can't get bus drivers to get our children to school because it's so hard to live here. So it's not universally the same effect necessarily, but that was one that I see everywhere. Crime is more of an issue in some parts of town than it is in others. Again, just affects people differently. Transit is one that I think affects, it affects the entire community, but for some people it's a nuisance, and for other people it's a matter of life and death, or employment or unemployment. So just
when you say nuisance, you mean that it's just hard to get around?
Right, my commute to work now takes me 5 minutes longer, and that makes me grumpy. But it doesn't mean that I no longer have a job.
Right.
So it certainly is a matter of degree in some places.
And in District 18, how do people?
So District 18 is the smallest, physically most compact district in the entire city. I'm not a very good runner, but I enjoy running, and I can run my entire district. You get to Joelton in District 1, and that district goes on forever. It is massive. You have to have a car to operate in that one. In my district, it's a very walkable district, and we've got some great transit lines that will get you to downtown efficiently. So you can live in District 18 and rely on public transit, and it works. District 1 in that area, that may be a much more difficult proposition to travel on public transportation.
So when you were talking about some threads and some differences, I just want to put this kind of plainly. I think the people in this room would love to think that you're our kind of people. But when you're operating at the district-wide level, it's not just about the people, it's about the big forces in the community. And I wonder if you found that actually just appealing to ordinary people was enough to win, and how much you had to deal with the big forces, and what's it like to go from being a neighborhood activist to being someone who's dealing with the chamber and all of those folks?
I mean, I think you just have to be open to everyone. I love District 18, but I think a whole lot like everybody else in District 18, which made it really easy. I feel like they embrace many of the issues that are important to me, which I appreciate. But it's also important for me to go to other districts and to see in this part of town, other things are important to you. And I need to understand that, and I need to listen to that. For me, it just involved, I like to consider myself a broad-minded person, but I worked on being in Hermitage, which is a new part of town for me, and saying, okay, folks in Hermitage are dealing with very different issues from what folks in District 18.
And now they're your constituents.
And now they're my constituents, and so I need to be more aware of what's important to them. I spent a lot of time on Jefferson Street. I think those are issues that I have spent a lot of time with that I'm seeing over there, so it actually was more familiar to me than Hermitage. Interestingly, but still, lots of wonderful new people to have great conversations with and to hear their perspective. So just embrace the diversity.
How do you wrestle with being a person driven by some pretty deep principles and versus being pragmatic? Are those at odds for you?
I think Pragmatic would say, it's going to be slow to get these important things done, and principled is, I want to fix this right now. I think it is important to fix it, but I think we have to, which Noah's so fantastic at doing, is figuring out what are the steps and what can we get done this week and what can we get done this month and what can we get done this year, and what are goals that are, if we don't have those aspirational goals, we'll never get to them. But what are ones that we know will take longer, but we need to just describe them now and lay out the timeline for that.
Well, I want to talk about one of those in particular with you, but I'd love to hear a little bit about, there's a big turnover in the council, which it seems like makes a bunch of opportunities for new alliances and relationships and looking at issues in new ways, and maybe just the opposite, that things could go the other way around. Call out anybody you want to call out, but what's when you look at the council, where do you see people coming together, and who do you feel like you're going to be able to work with, and what are the priorities?
So we had a total of one council meeting. I'm still getting to know the newbies there. We had 27 new council members in 2015, so actually this seems like less of a turnover to me. So I'll just say in general terms, I'm excited about the new energy that I feel. I think this new group coming in, I think, some of that idealism of I want to fix it now is great. And I think it's wonderful not to have already been, had worked a year and a half on inclusionary zoning and had the state preempt you on it. That can be wearying and a little bit defeating, and I am re-energized by this new crowd coming in saying we're going to get things done, I intend to draw on that energy, and I'm lucky enough to be chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. I keep coming back to that one because it's important to me. And that's a great group on that committee. It's mostly new folks. So I'm going to spend the first couple of our meetings educating them and introducing them to the different groups and stuff, and know what will be one of the groups that I introduce them to. And then I'm expecting them to take off and run with it, and I'm hoping we'll do great things. So I am excited about the new folks coming in. I'm pleased to sort of know some of the folks that I've already spent 4 years working with that I kind of know how to approach, which is comforting. But I think that the new ones are also going to be great allies in getting some good things done.
So I think I've heard you identify what I would call at least three sort of centers of power for you. Veteran, council at large. It sounds like that gives you an edge in some things, and this important chair. How do you weigh those? Does one give you more access and influence than another?
At this point, I mean, I feel like being that committee chair, at least for the affordable housing piece of it, and there are other issues that Noah deals with that I'm just kind of one of the team players. But for affordable housing right now, I feel like I've got the opportunity just to put some good structure in place, and my goal is to enable all the people that are interested to be empowered to make things happen. I mean, I think it's easy to know what you're excited about doing and to sort of come up with your plan. So I want to be really deliberate about expanding that effectiveness, and to make sure that whole group of people learns as much as they can in a hurry and is made aware of what has been done and what other cities are doing that we can learn from, and what groups are out there that they can connect with, just to be able to leverage all that knowledge and enthusiasm and get the 10 of us that are on that committee doing 10 times as much as I could be doing. So
if this sounds like a snotty question, you'll pardon me.
okay.
I love what you just said about building a team as a committee around affordable housing that's got their own level of investment rather than just following your orders. It could also sound like you're naive about how that's going to operate.
You got to start being optimistic, I think. I think that the experience that I've had with the council so far is that when people are interested in something, they'll put the energy into finding out what the best practices are, what other cities have done, and making things happen. And if we, to some degree, because of sunshine laws, which are a good thing, we sort of have to work in silos, and that's not always as effective. So I'm just working hard to make sure that the committee structure that I have some input on is our opportunity to touch base with each other and to say, here's what I need your help on, here's an avenue that I think is important that I'm gonna spend some energy on, and I'll be back and bring that back to the group. So I just think that, like I say, putting the structure in place to empower everybody to be effective can just make that much more happen, and to be able to work with all the different groups that are out there that are.
You didn't say it, but I hear you saying that that's the kind of council you want, so you're gonna create the committee that looks like the kind of council you want.
That's my goal with the committee, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think absolutely the council can work that way well on other important issues as well. But I'm not in charge of those, so.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question about Noah's relationship with the council at large. And one of the things that we hear in lots of places from elected officials, though I'm not asking you to say this, I'm telling you I've heard other people say this. If you want us to go there, you're going to have to push us. If you want us to go there, you're going to have to give us some cover. Are there, again, name people if you want to, but you don't have to. What are the places in the council and around issues like affordable housing and transportation? What kind of press and cover would you like to see Noah create?
I mean, first of all, I would just thank Noah for what has happened already. That this group was fantastic on the inclusionary zoning, some of the pushes that we made for education and for transit. I think we got a lot more work to do on transit. Again, just to talk about housing affordability, I think there are some tax incentives that may be good tools that we can use, and just to try to think through together as a group. A tax incentive is a good thing if it makes something happen, and private development, is spending their money on it and it's working for them, but it also means less tax revenue. So we've got to think through together,
And where should those incentives go?
They should.
Because they often go places where some of us think
yeah.
they're not really needed, right?
But the question is, if we're using them to often what we do is we use them to bring jobs, and jobs are good things, and that's why we have done that traditionally. If we can use them to bring long-term, permanent, affordable housing, which is something we desperately need. I mean, we all keep grabbing that 31,000 unit number out there, and the city is not going to be able to build all 31,000 by ourselves. It's going to take some public-private partnership. So that's a tool I'm looking at, and again, I'm thinking of working as a team, and Noah to me is a very important part of that
Keep
team.
that number up front.
Yeah, just study that number, make sure it's a good number. Are we still headed for that one? Do we have a better one? And then the housing scorecard is something that this group is also helpful in, and we have gotten the legislation that says we have to have it, but we haven't had it be produced yet. I have talked to the mayor's office and to the to NDHA about the data for that, and they are working on it, but they have, for whatever reason, not been comfortable enough to release it yet. I'll be meeting with them next week to talk about, let's just make sure that we are keeping track of where we're going with this. Are we making progress, or are we going backwards? I think that having that important information is something that this group needs to do. And also trying to look at legislation, meaningful legislation that will move the needle is something we have to do. But it may involve some trade-offs. I mean, if we can incentivize getting more housing built, but that means we get a little bit less tax income from that property, and that may mean that's a little bit less money to spend on education. Can we get comfortable on that as a decision? And I think having people who are willing to have those hard conversations is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it really frustrating that we keep being pushed to decide between healthcare and transportation and housing and education?
Right. I mean, that is, I think, the unavoidable consequence of not having infinite resources.
Right.
It would be lovely to have infinite resources.
So let's think about
reality.
For a minute. Let's let ourselves be depressed for a minute, because you
And
talked
then
a couple
can we
of you talked. What's that?
I said, we'll be depressed.
I know. That's why I got a couple other things I want to ask you about. But so when we think about preemption, and we think about things that you and other people in this room fought for hard, I know what it's like to fight and win and watch it snatched out from under you. We shut down the campaign one time, and I was sitting in the car. We shut it down on a Sunday morning before I went into church. I was in the car and cried.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about preemption, you said it's kind of, I don't know, you said depressing or discouraging or whatever. Where do you strategically, how does that fit in to what we're trying to do? Do we just need to work around it? Is there a way to go at it? What's your learning from losing that way?
You always have to learn something. I would say two things. Number one, the other part of that process was the creation of the housing incentive pilot program, HIP. And that was money that was set aside for all these volunteer private affordable housing that was going to get built, because the developer said, don't make us do this, just let us do it, and we promise we'll do it. We said, great, we'll create this incentive program, and you take advantage of it. And there are 3 projects that are taking advantage of it, 2 of them in my district, I will say. They are small, but at least it's a demonstration of this can work well. This can create an opportunity for someone who is earning much less than the area median income, and put them in a great location in an area of opportunity, close to transit, to get to a good job downtown. And if we can show that it works, then that will help us, I hope, circle back around to say, we need to do more of this. And look, Mr. State, here's an example of success. This is helping people be self-supporting and need less government, and that's what you love. So, in an ideal world, maybe we will eventually circle back around to that and get some allies in other parts of the state who will unpreempt us. But, I'm waxing idealistic again.
So this is what I was asking about principle and pragmatic.
Yeah.
That's very pragmatic. I love that piece of it. The thing that makes me nervous about what you just said is that when we use the frame of, you want smaller government, I want to give you smaller government, now we're on their narrative. You just feel like maybe that's the best we're available.
I mean, at some point, we have to speak to the people who are obstacles to us in terms of things that may seem like priorities to them. I still see the important gains that are the priorities to me as well.
Yeah. I want to ask you 2 other things, and then we'll see if there's things that you want to talk about. This morning, we had a really interesting conversation about public transportation money in the city. and the failure of the bill, which had a bunch of great stuff in it, probably a bunch of problems, and probably a bunch of problems with the campaign. And we've got all of these roots cut, and we're trying to figure out whether there's a way to restore those roots and to engineer some deeper investment. What do you think the path might be to restoring cut bus routes in terms of the city budget?
I mean, I think it's a matter of not having the resources that we need. I think finding somewhere along the line, either some other place to get money from, which is not immediately apparent, or a dedicated source of funding that people are comfortable with, to provide more funding would make that would be the easiest solution to restoring those routes that have been cut. I think in the long run, what I would like to see happen is the continuation of building a coalition of people who not only have an interest in transit, but have gotten very knowledgeable about it. And to have that whole coalition work together to come up with a long-term plan that everyone is comfortable with, that they don't feel like, will be detrimental to housing issues or to other issues that have been part of the reason that I think that it died in this second round. And then, maybe the third time will be the charm, and we can, as a coalition, come back and look at something that is perhaps part of a bigger plan, but is more of a bite off a little chunk. That maybe just has one leg that goes somewhere and connects all the way with another county, as opposed to saying, let's look at these 5 things that go towards 5 different places but don't connect anywhere. I think that was a problem.
It sounds like you'd be hopeful that there could be some coalition that holds together affordable housing and transportation rather than pit against each other.
Exactly, because they're so intertwined, they have to be thought of together, but in a way that is complementary as opposed to harmful.
I want to go back where we started, and you talked about how you decided to run, which was linked to your sense of community at home that you thought you lost, that got restored by your belonging to the neighborhood association. And then there was this magic moment in the way you told the story that all of a sudden that translated to I'm going to run for office. And I lost what it was, for people who think, oh no, I'm not supposed to run for office. What actually happened in that magic moment that you didn't quite let us in on? What was it that made you say, oh, the thing that I love about living in a small town, I'm going to live that out by running for office?
I think it went from finding my community to finding out how to improve my community, and then discovering effective ways to make improvements to my community and thinking, well, actually, we could do this for a larger community. So it was, again, planting trees was a great thing just in our little neighborhood, but then, discovering that there are other parts of Nashville that desperately need trees.
So you wanted to get on a bigger platform. So that's my last question then. If you ran for office because you could see the opportunities of a bigger platform, and you ran for countywide for at large, because you were willing to work with people as constituents who maybe you didn't even quite agree with, what's next?
What's next? The next 4 years, I gotta get some good things done citywide.
That sounds like somebody running for president.
Yeah.
I want to be senator first.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to back you. I mean, do you have a sense of where this might be taking you next?
I have definitely right now I'm focused on what can I accomplish in the big issues that have been identified, and how can I enable a lot of people to work together to make things happen. That's kind of right now where I'm looking.
Yeah. And at the heart of that work is the council, and it sounds to me, again, I'm just using your words against you, the council operates inside systems too. So at some point, what are the links between the way the council works with the mayor, works with the chamber, works with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, all of that? So it sounds like you'd be interested in all of that too. But right now your focus is your committee.
Yeah, I would, in the context of what to me seems relevant with NOAA, I would say that. I'm certainly participating in all the other things the council does, planning and budget and that type of thing, and choosing the next education board member. So there are plenty of other pieces that I'll be putting energy into as well.
I just got the hook. Was there anything else?
Yeah, it's the only other thing I would say. But I would say I think it's important. The charge he had given me is sort of how do things get done in the council, I guess one thing that hasn't naturally come up in the course of your questions is the importance of, number one, doing the research. And I think that's a matter of the council member doing research, but also drawing upon other groups that have the ability to do some really great research. And again, this is something that this group does really well. And then writing good legislation, which to me involves talking to all the other departments that are involved, as well as working with the mayor's office and that type of thing. So, I mean, I didn't specifically bring that up, but I think that is the only way that you can write good legislation that will also stand. And then building the coalition both in the community so that you got the support, and then among your council peers, so that you can get their support, because it just works better if you pass it with consensus. So that whole process, to me, begins with empowering the 10 people that I'm excited about working with to go out and do that.
Yeah, research is not just the white paper, it's also how do we get the votes in place to win, right?
That, and what is, what fits in this community, and what are best practices in other cities? We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but what's been done in other places, and how does that translate into Nashville, or how do we need to modify it? And who do we need to listen to here, that's gonna be affected by it? So.
Angie, you're gonna debrief this?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.